The sound of a heavy metal lock sliding shut usually means safety. But at 30,000 feet above the French Alps, it became a death sentence. Captain Patrick Sondenheimer stood outside the cockpit, staring at a door he couldn't get back through. On the other side, in complete silence, his co-pilot Andreas Lubitz had already made his decision. This is the story of Germanwings Flight 9525, a routine flight that turned into one of the most disturbing tragedies in modern aviation. To understand how a modern jetliner with a clean safety record could be driven into a mountainside in broad daylight, we have to go back to the beginning of a morning that felt entirely ordinary. It was March 24th, 2015, at Barcelona El Prat Airport, a massive, sun-drenched hub on the Mediterranean coast of Spain. For the passengers of Flight 9525, the day was about the simple logistics of getting home or starting a business trip. There were 144 passengers on board, including 2 babies and 16 high school students from Haltern, Germany, who were returning from an exchange program, their backpacks filled with souvenirs and stories for their parents. The aircraft was an Airbus A320, a workhorse of the skies known for its sophisticated fly-by-wire technology and a safety philosophy that usually prevents the plane from doing anything the computers deem dangerous. At the controls was Captain Patrick Sondenheimer, a seasoned pilot with over 6,000 flight hours, a man described by colleagues as reliable, professional, and a father of 2. To his right sat 27-year-old First Officer Andreas Lubitz. Lubitz was less experienced, but had been obsessed with flying since he was a teenager in the small town of Montabaur, eventually earning his way into the prestigious Lufthansa flight school. On paper, they were a standard, competent crew. The boarding process was smooth, and at 10:01 a.m. local time, the twin engines of the Airbus whined to life. The flight was bound for Düsseldorf, a journey of about 800 miles that should have taken just under 2 hours. As the plane taxied toward the runway, there was nothing to suggest this was anything other than a textbook operation. The weather was clear, the aircraft was in peak mechanical condition, and the communication with air traffic control was crisp and professional. At 10:10 a.m., the wheels left the pavement. The A320 climbed steadily over the sparkling blue waters of the Mediterranean before turning north toward the rugged, snow-capped peaks of the Alps. By 10:27 a.m., the aircraft reached its assigned cruising altitude of 38,000 feet. This is usually the most relaxed part of a flight, where the pilots can engage the autopilot, check their charts, and perhaps share a bit of small talk. The cockpit voice recorder would later capture the mundane sounds of this period, the rustle of papers, the faint hum of the air conditioning, and a conversation between the 2 men. Sondenheimer mentioned that he hadn't had time to use the restroom before leaving Barcelona. Lubitz, sounding helpful and calm, told the captain he could go whenever he liked. This was a standard courtesy. However, there was a slight tension in Lubitz's responses. When the captain briefed the arrival into Düsseldorf, Lubitz used words like "hopefully" and "we'll see," small linguistic tics that only seem significant in hindsight. At 10:30 a.m., the captain gave a final confirmation of an instruction from air traffic control. It was the last time his voice would be heard on the radio. He unbuckled his harness, the seat tracks groaned as he slid back, and the cockpit door clicked shut behind him. In a post-9/11 world, cockpit doors are designed to be impenetrable. They are reinforced with Kevlar and heavy locking bolts, capable of withstanding a grenade blast or a focused physical assault. On this Airbus, the door featured a 3-position switch: unlocked, norm, and locked. Under normal operations, the door remains in norm. If someone wants to enter, they press a keypad outside. A buzzer sounds in the cockpit, and the pilot flips the switch to unlocked. If the pilot is incapacitated, a secret emergency code can be entered to override the lock after a 30-second delay. However, if the pilot inside moves the switch to locked, it overrides everything, including the emergency code, for 5 minutes. This is a security feature intended to keep hijackers out, even if they have the code. As soon as the captain left, the flight data recorder registered a manual change to the autopilot. Someone in the cockpit turned the altitude dial from 38,000 feet down to just 100 feet. The descent was not a sudden, terrifying dive. It was a controlled, gradual transition. To the passengers in the back, it might have felt like the beginning of their approach to Düsseldorf, perhaps a bit early, but nothing to cause immediate alarm. But for air traffic controllers in Marseille, France, the screens began to show a worrying trend. Flight 9525 was leaving its assigned altitude without any authorization. At 10:33 a.m., a controller radioed the flight. Germanwings 9525, descend to flight level 240, expedite. There was no response. The controller tried again, his voice rising in urgency. Still, there was only radio silence. Inside the cockpit, the only sound was the steady, calm breathing of Andreas Lubitz, picked up by his headset microphone. He wasn't gasping, he wasn't crying, and he wasn't shouting. He was simply sitting there, watching the altimeter unwind. Outside the door, Captain Sondenheimer realized something was wrong. He tried the keypad. The buzzer rang inside the cockpit, audible on the voice recorder, but there was no answer. He knocked, first politely, then more forcefully. "For God's sake, open the door!" he shouted. He knew the plane was descending. He could feel the pitch of the floor beneath his feet and hear the engines spooling back. He tried the emergency code. On the flight deck, Lubitz saw the light flashing, indicating an override attempt. He reached over and moved the toggle to the locked position. The door stayed shut. Sondenheimer was now desperate. He signaled the cabin crew, and witnesses later suggested that an axe, a standard emergency tool kept in the rear of the plane, was brought forward. The sound of heavy metallic thuds began to echo through the cabin as the captain literally tried to chop his way through the high-tech security door. By 10:35 a.m., the situation was being treated as a major emergency by French authorities. They scrambled a Mirage fighter jet to intercept the unresponsive airliner, but the A320 was already dropping through 20,000 feet. The controllers continued to broadcast on all frequencies, even the emergency guard channel, begging the pilots to respond. In the cabin, the passengers were likely beginning to realize the descent was too steep and the captain's absence too long. The mountain peaks of the High Provence Alps were no longer distant scenery. They were rising up to meet them, jagged and unforgiving. At 10:40 a.m., the aircraft's ground proximity warning system, or GPWS, sensed the terrain. A synthetic metallic voice began to bark into the silent cockpit. "Terrain, pull up. Terrain, pull up." Lubitz did not move. He did not flinch. The voice recorder captured the sound of the captain's frantic blows against the door, the screaming of the GPWS, and the steady, haunting respiration of the man in the right seat. The A320 was traveling at nearly 500 miles per hour. In the final seconds, the screams of the passengers can be heard on the recording, a collective realization of the inevitable. At 10:41 a.m., the right wing of the plane clipped a mountain ridge. A split second later, Flight 9525 slammed into a ravine in the Massif des Trois Évêchés. The impact was so violent that the aircraft was not just broken, it was pulverized. The largest piece of wreckage found later was no bigger than a car door. All 150 people on board were killed instantly. Because the crash site was in a remote, high-altitude region, accessible only by helicopter or a long trek on foot, the recovery effort was a nightmare for French first responders. They found a debris field that looked like it had been put through a shredder. As investigators from the BEA, the French equivalent of the NTSB, began to sift through the wreckage, they quickly found the black boxes. When they listened to the cockpit voice recorder, the narrative shifted from a possible mechanical failure to something much more disturbing. They didn't hear an explosion or a mechanical alarm. They heard a man breathing while his captain died trying to break down a door. The investigation into Andreas Lubitz's life revealed a history of severe depression and suicidal tendencies. Years prior, during his training, he had informed Lufthansa that he was suffering from a depressive episode, which led to a break in his instruction. More shockingly, in the weeks leading up to the crash, Lubitz had visited dozens of doctors. He was terrified he was losing his vision, a condition doctors believed was psychosomatic, but which Lubitz feared would end his flying career. On his computer, investigators found searches for cockpit door security and ways to commit suicide. On the day of the flight, he had a torn-up doctor's note in his trash can that declared him unfit for work. He had hidden his condition from his employer, knowing that if he came forward, he would never fly again. This tragedy exposed a massive flaw in global aviation: the rule of two. At the time, many European airlines allowed a single pilot to remain alone in the cockpit if the other had to step out. In the United States, regulations already required a flight attendant to step into the cockpit if a pilot left, ensuring that no one person ever had total unchecked control of the aircraft. Following the Germanwings disaster, airlines across the globe scrambled to implement this two-person rule. The industry also had to reckon with the delicate balance between pilot privacy and public safety, leading to more rigorous mental health screenings and peer support programs designed to catch the warning signs of a breakdown before it reaches the flight deck. Germanwings Flight 9525 remains a somber reminder that the most advanced technology in the world is still subject to the complexities of the human heart and mind. The reinforced door, designed to keep the world's terrors out, had tragically kept the help out when it was needed most. As the sun sets over the memorial at the crash site in the French Alps, a field of 149 gold-plated elements representing those lost, it stands as a testament to the lives cut short by a man who was supposed to protect them. The aviation world is safer today because of the lessons learned from this dark morning, but for the families of the 150 souls on board, the silence of the Alps remains a heavy, permanent weight, a reminder of the day the safety of the cockpit became a tomb. And maybe the most unsettling part of this story isn't how it ended. It's that nothing actually failed. No engine blew. No system broke. This wasn't an accident. It was a decision. Since that day, aviation has changed. New rules, stricter checks, better safeguards. But the truth is, no system in the world can fully protect against what's happening inside someone's mind. And that's why the story of Germanwings Flight 9525 still feels so haunting. No chaos in the cockpit, no last-second struggle, just breathing and a locked door. If you're into stories like this, real, complex, and a little unsettling, hit subscribe. There's a lot more to uncover.